Hello and welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. Today I have a very special guest with me. I have Phil Galler from Lux Machina, and we're going to be having a fairly generalized conversation about what Lux does, some of the technologies that they're working on, and just kind of a general idea and insight of business and how we're working today. So Phil, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, of course. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little kind of insight as to the company, how it started, like how you ended up getting to where you are today.
Yeah, okay. So we started, I don't know, it was probably 7 or 8, it's almost a decade now. I moved to LA, theatrically trained lighting designer. Went to Emerson College in Boston, and I moved to LA in the height of sort of the recession. It was sort of a toss-up between going
2008-ish?
2008-ish, yeah. It was, I graduated in 2009, so it was that sort of July, August of 2009 is when I moved, and it was a decision between New York and LA, and I chose LA because I felt like I would ultimately do better in TV than I would in theater. There was something about TV that I think was a little bit new for me coming out of school, but so I ended up actually at PRG. And it was a great opportunity. And I worked with some awesome people for a very long time at PRG. And that's where I met my business partner, Zach Alexander, who was a project manager for PRG. And then I was a production coordinator where I helped handle they call multidiscipline shows. It was shows that had audio, video, lighting, rigging. So I was sort of like a jack of all trades, kind of bring it in and really put shows together and then put them out. It was a good experience. I got my hands on a lot of technology, and I think it was through that experience that I learned that I wanted. I learned a little bit more about myself. I learned that I wanted to deal with video, and I really liked the interaction of lighting and video. And through some probably sheer will and good luck, I ended up on Oblivion with Zach, who had designed this projection solution that we kind of all been looking at with a DP named Claudio Miranda. And there have been other versions of it, prior to that, but this was sort of the first like really large scale deployment with a very specific goal of solving for glass reflection, stuff that like was back then and still is, but less so. Really challenging to fix in post, very expensive to fix in post. Imagine how all the tools you have right now. You rewind a decade, those tools they didn't look the same. So we did Oblivion. It was on the set of Oblivion that we decided that like there was probably a better way to do this. And I don't think we kind of knew where we were going. We just knew that like it had been a painful process and there was probably a way to make it less painful, both for us, for PRG, and for the end client. And like there was someone missing in the puzzle, right? There was like someone who like actually understood production, but also understood the equipment side and understood the technology, but also the creative end goal. There's people just like didn't exist at the time. And basically it was screens producing, right? There was no screens producer on that show, and like they needed a screens producer. So we Zach and I kind of dabbled in that world for a little bit. And, we played with the idea of starting our own thing. And we finally did. We formed our own company, Lux Machina, which is where we are now, to help execute Tomorrowland, which was a job for also for Claudio Miranda with lots of LED. We did it's been really interesting
awesome
stuff.
Movie, by the way. I really enjoyed that one.
Thank you. It was a really interesting. It's like a lot of people don't, it's not a show we ever talk about because it's kind of so long ago, and it didn't have the gravitas of Oblivion, right? So people don't talk about it. But for us, it was actually really cool. It was probably one of the first deployments of disguise on a movie. We were on some kind of beta, I think, in I don't know if it was. I have no idea what version it was, and we were definitely on whatever the oldest chassis available were, and we were actually feeding MBox into D3 through live inputs and using disguises, D3 at the time, D3's cylindrical mapping tool to actually map we had 2100 LED fixtures, and we mapped the 2100 LED fixtures into a perfect cylinder and mapped that using the cylindrical mapping tools. The only time I think I've ever used the cylindrical mapping tools in disguise, mapped it into the shape of the cylinder, with the ability to then track the content virtually, which was actually was really fascinating. Back then I didn't know quite where we were headed.
Then that was mind blowing. That was like next level stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely not. It was, for, I guess, looking back at it, it was important. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't know where it was headed, but obviously it was something that was gonna be important for us. What we did is we had to make the content way larger than the physical space that we had, so that as we moved screens up and down, basically the setup was 16 individual screens, of combinations of fixtures, and so we could move the screens apart, put a camera crane through one end, and we could rotate the entire thing on the cylinder. And the idea was to give them, like, basically unlimited flexibility, and we did that using Disguise as mapping tools. And we knew that the DP and the director were going to need to move quickly, and MBox's director tools were the right fit. So we ended up kind of hodgepodging a system together, and it worked out really well. And that's sort of where I think we, like, looked at each other and were like, okay, yeah, this is probably a thing we can do. And we can probably hodgepodge this technology together, and we can adapt it from the various concert touring and broadcast markets, and we can build our own stuff and put it down on a film set and actually walk in and be confident that we could basically screens produce part of the film. Yeah, so that's where it started, and that's where Lux really was solidified. So yeah.
That's pretty friggin' wild. So I wanted to ask you, kind of coming into this and having that experience and that background. I've worked in a number of film production and TV myself, and it can be chaotic and crazy and all kinds of stuff running around. So out of all the projects you could think of, what was the most challenging project you think you guys took on?
Oh, I'm sure there's some I can't talk about. Let me see. I think of the projects that have been the most challenging. Oblivion was really difficult. Like, from a scheduling point of view, it was very, very difficult. You can imagine trying to warp 21 projectors in 2010 and make them look completely linear. Like, the tools just did not exist in the way they do right now. There wasn't automated mapping. Right, it was a team of projectionists. You guys were kind of starting from the starting point where these tools were not fully matured and developed yet. Yeah,
you guys were also probably working in workflows that you had never really worked in before.
Yeah,
and trying to figure them out and get comfortable and working with new tools and new technology at the time to make it all work.
Yeah,
I feel like we're kind of in the same place today in a lot of ways now when we're entering into kind of the virtual production scene, and you see a lot of experiments happening right now and concepts happening with Unreal. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later on, because that's some pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I think for us it was Oblivion was challenging, and then and since then there have been a lot of challenges. But I think that gave us a frame of reference for everything we should do should be easier than this, because this was painful enough to almost not work, right? And so when we hit that barrier, it was like, okay, now the goal of the company isn't to just do cool shit. It's to do cool shit that we can make easier every single time, that we can build a workflow around.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, over just in the last 3 years, we've been able to increase from a workflow point of view using a variety of tools from Panasonic, Disguise, PRG, some of our own making. I would be comfortable deploying a system like Oblivion in about 3 days now. And that original install took 3.5 weeks. You know what I mean? And for us, that's like, it's an exponential change, right? It's an order of magnitude less time, ultimately. And I think that speaks to, for us, our focus on how to make tools work for the markets that we're in, not just how to take a tool off the shelf and hope that it's going to work. You know what I mean? Like, you got to have the right tool for the right job. That's where ultimately, like, why I think everything has been easier since then.
Mm-hmm.
I will say Solo, super challenging. There were some really, really challenging moments on Solo where we were, we had started off doing the Kessel run, and we were going to do it in 3 or 4 separate sequences, and it was going to be great, and nobody was going to have to worry about linearity or continuity. We were just going to, shoot this sequence, and then shoot this sequence, and then shoot this sequence, and we'll tie it all together in post, and no one will ever know. It'll be great. And so we programmed out, I don't know, probably 15 different timelines with all this stuff, dozens of
famous last words.
Famous last words, right? And so then it was morning of the first day, the Rob Readout, ILM, a great supervisor and great guy, walks up to us, and we've been collaborating with them for years at this point, and it was all right. Like, it's gonna be really helpful if the talent can, like, really just sit and, like, go through the entire thing so they can, like, understand what this whole thing is. And he's like, I know we talked about this. I know we didn't talk about doing it that way, but, like, what is it going to take? Like, is that possible? A, and then B, what's it going to take to get you guys there? And I think we were like, all right, it's gonna be a couple hours of like reprogramming. Like, do we have that time? And he was like, however fast you can do it. And I think 45 minutes later, we had figured out how to hodgepodge the 15 timelines together into like one timeline with this weird like track jump thing that Duke 3 had worked out for us, and some other lighting stuff they had worked out for us. And it was tough. I mean, it was really, really tough. And I think like there's this general misconception, I think, about film work, that it's maybe easier or different. And the difference usually equates to easy. And it's not, you know what I mean? It's some of the hardest programming work we've ever had to do, because you end up doing things like that, things that a concert touring artist wouldn't ask you to do necessarily. Like, they want to deal in individual tracks. They're not going from point A all the way to point B sometimes. I think, yeah, anyways, that to me, that was one of the hardest things we've had to do.
Yeah, I can understand that. And, you know, the other thing that there's a misconception of that you can always reshoot and do it again.
Yeah.
And people ignore to think about the fact that it's money, lots and lots and lots of money is being spent every single second that's being shot. Yeah. So even though yes, you can do retakes, it's going to cost a huge chunk of change if you don't have the time.
Exactly.
So you know, with all the craziness that's kind of happening around us now, what's affected your business these days? Like, how has this situation impacted the work that you guys are doing currently?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. You know, we sort of, after SIGGRAPH last year, we did, you know, our sort of presentation with Epic, and that was good. And we were kind of thinking, okay, it's going to be 2021, 2022 is when most of the stuff is going to really mature. And what we're seeing is that coronavirus and the sort of the results of COVID-19, right, have been that what we thought were going to be good solutions for everyone in 3 or 4 years, you know, 2.5 years, whatever, were all of a sudden much more relevant, but had not had the chance to mature. So it was figuring out, okay, not just from a presentation point of view, like how do we communicate these things, but also from a business point of view, how do we mature to a point where we're comfortable pitching to executives that this is actually a thing that they not only now need, but actually is stable and works, not just a science project that's been sort of hacked together by a bunch of engineers and coding guys over the course of 8 months, right? It's okay, how do we actually have a conversation about the business side of this thing? How do we deploy it, and how does that actually happen? And for us, that has been the biggest disruption to our business. Is not necessarily that there's no work. There is no work, and like we all will deal with that. It's that the work that's coming back, we weren't planning for really until next year. And so from a scale, a growth, and really a business model point of view, it was very, very quickly turning around a business model that is largely unproven, first and foremost, but more importantly, hadn't really been thought all the way through, because it was something that we thought was going to organically grow and the pieces would fit together in a more natural way. And
and then all of a sudden the big bomb
together. Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, change the way you work, change the way everything is done.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, business is one of the bigger aspects to it. A lot of the stuff I've spoken about has been, you know, impacts on business, and I think the general consensus has been the same, that things are going to change slowly, and kind of, I wouldn't say come back to 100% normal, but kind of change and evolve to these new normals. So, you know, with you working predominantly in the film industry these days, how do you think that industry is going to be impacted, and what are your thoughts on the change or the moves forward?
Yeah. Well, so what I will say is, I think there's this weird misconception about Lux, that we're film guys, and like, we love film. It's a lot of fun, but the reality is we think of ourselves as 5 key verticals, which is film and episodic. It's definitely one of them. We also do quite a bit of corporate work that nobody really knows about, because we just don't talk about it as much. Something we can't talk about.
Hey, it's one of the reasons why you're here.
Yeah, that's true. And then live we still do quite a bit of live broadcast work, and of course, we actually view consulting as a business unto itself, as is our research and development. So, you know, we really view all these things, and what's kind of really nice is that at least 2 of those 3 businesses continue, right? When there's no work, people still need consultation about what is going to happen in the future, and they still need research and development to be done so they can be prepared for whatever the new, I don't know if I want to call it the new normal is, whatever the return to work is. So I think, right now there are challenges. How do we move forward is the biggest question, right? And I think a lot of the work that we do and that we've done is in many ways geared us up for this. I think that we're, you know, oftentimes people were doing things with us already so that they didn't have to go on location. And because of that, we're kind of already looking at it going, well, we're already kind of doing this stuff. Like we're already, okay, we're even like the very bare minimum example would be like the Irishman, right? We do the Irishman and we worked very closely with PRG on it. It was, it was a good success. And we put LED screens outside vehicles and something that we do fairly common. Usually when we're working, it's at least once a month we have a show like that. We're doing projection LED around a vehicle. The reality is like people are doing that stuff so they don't have to get 40 people, get a process trailer, get 3 camera guys out, figure out how to drive down the town, get the police escorts, close down the street, pull the permits, the 900 things that UPMs and location scouts have to do to make this actually work. Like we were already solving for that, not in an effort to do it to solve for this new issue, but because like it was a more practical and pragmatic approach to production. So I think like we still look at that and go, okay, yeah, there's practical and pragmatic approaches to how to solve all these problems. And like, we think we're in the right place. We're doing the right stuff. I think, really the biggest difference coming out of this will be, I think the playing field has been reset. The baseline is reset. A lot of people are able to learn new stuff during this time. A lot of people are able to demonstrate capability, and there's people willing to take risks on unproven stuff. And that really, I think, levels the playing field. And that has been the biggest change for us. It's really interesting to see. I think it's great to see lots of new people and new faces contributing to the creative market.
Yeah, and you're starting to, especially right now with, as you mentioned, people kind of fast track learning processes. They've got tons of time now. Got some really smart and intelligent people that are kind of picking up tools that they haven't been able to work with in the past, and are really starting to push boundaries and push forward with the time that they've had. And I highly believe that education and that time is going to pay off really, really well in the short term.
Yeah,
so
education is key.
Pardon?
Education is key.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the number of companies I've worked with, I absolutely know that education is like number one.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit about R&D, I know that there's a lot of stuff that you cannot talk about with me, but for the stuff that you can speak about, what are you guys currently looking at? What kind of technologies are you guys looking into?
Yeah. So it's actually for us, it's actually really straightforward. I mean, some of I can't dive into, but like the answer is that, like, ultimately when we look at something, it's an approach of how do we make our lives easier? Like, honestly, like that's where we come from. We're not making products.
More workflow driven.
Yeah, it's 100% workflow driven. It's how do I ease the pain of going from solution A to solution B when solution B doesn't have everything that went into solution A. Right. And we're doing this sort of across the board. I'm going to use Unreal for an example. Right. And look, Unreal is great. Engines are great. Love real time. It's awesome. But the reality is, like, none of these platforms were ever actually made to do live show production. Right. They just weren't. It was never thought that, I'm sure 5 years ago when Unreal Engine 3 was a thing that people thought this was going to become. Right. It wasn't the core ethos. And I think so we view this as how do we adapt the tools that we had. Like if I was to go redo Oblivion and I was going to try to do it with Unreal or even with Disguise and Unreal, right? Like there's a level of tools that have been developed for pre-rendered workflows that need to be adapted to real-time workflows. This is one thing that we've learned is that once you work with a client and you set a level with them, that client doesn't forget, right? Yeah. You don't get to walk on set and just because you're using a new tool, not have the tool that they use last, right? Just because you're using something new doesn't mean that they care that you're using something new. Like it very much it's, oh, we had this cool color thing last time. Why don't I have that now? Right? They don't care that it's Unreal. They don't care that it's Unity. They don't care that it's Notch.
They just want the job to get done.
Yeah, and they want to get it done the way they thought they could get it done every other time they've worked with you. And so, I mean, a lot of our R&D and development work focuses purely on easing the pain we have of adopting new tools so that we can deploy them in the most effective way possible. And then we look at a lot of technology. We look at all the camera tracking stuff. We dive into pretty sure more intensely than they would like me to. We will pull stuff apart and we will figure out what makes it tick and why it's not working in the way we need it to, and then we will work very closely with the manufacturers to get them that information. Our goal is not to make proprietary products that belong to Lux. It's to help the industry move forward because we want those products, but it also gives us really good long range visibility on what issues might arise. So.
So would you say that a lot of your work is also trying to adapt to other people's workflows and the way that they work? Make their life easier?
Yeah. It was. I don't know that it is anymore. I think it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I think when we thought we were on the 2021, 2022 timeline for virtual production, it was adapting into the studio workflow. I think in the world we're in right now, people just need answers. And sometimes the best answer is this is a workflow that we know works, that we are comfortable with, and this is what we're going to do. And sometimes, like, when your client is lost, you need to just tell them what to do so that they can get where they need to go. And I mean, it's true, right? Like, and I honestly think that, like, we're in a world right now where clients are lost and client management is so important. It's like the most important thing we do, right? And ultimately, sometimes that management means telling them that, like, this is how it is going to work because we have proven out that it does work. So I think the answer is yes and no, right? It's adapting tools that make our lives easier for the workflows that we think are most important. So, yeah.
I think we pull that back to education again, right? We go right back to that whole point of education, educating your client, making sure they understand how things work, what kind of time you need, the equipment, budgets.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and equipment, budgets, but also, like scheduling, man. Scheduling is so important, and people just like don't want to think about it, right? And they like to think that, oh, you can build the Mandalorian in a day. That's not how it happens, right? And like, there's a lot, and I know everyone says, oh, everyone will tell you they worked on the Mandalorian, right? Everyone will tell you they know a guy, and I can tell you, I got a couple of guys, and the reality is, like, it's tough. Like, the stuff is tough. It takes a lot of time and it's a lot of work, and it requires really, really careful work. And the thing that should never be forgotten is that every minute of pre-production is worth 2 or 3 minutes in production. And that doesn't change whether it's virtual production or physical production. It's all production. More time up front will always help you save dollars and time on the back end.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an important point too, because, especially with the way that people are budgeting with things today, I think that also coming out of this, people are going to be a little more cautious with the money that they're spending, the way that they spend it, and they're going to get, a little bit more, let's call it smart, about the way that they approach things and the way that they kind of handle and manage their time along with the money and the investment that they're making.
100%.
So, yeah, I have a pretty good feeling that that's going to change as well. For the people viewing, I was wondering if you had any advice to give to the people that might be watching the episode today, just from the experiences that you've collected and that you've had over the course of the last 12 years.
You know what?
Since you started Lux.
Yeah, no. So here's the deal. I have two working ethoses, right? My dad gave me one piece of advice that I kind of generally try to live by, which is that do what you love and the money will come. Right. And that is in my mind, like, whether you're a line cook or you're working at Starbucks or you're a virtual production producer, if you're doing what you like, eventually, like, the world will find a way to make things work for you. And it may mean that you live a different life than you thought you were going to, which gets me to my second point, which is, like, I went to college thinking I was going to be a theatrical lighting designer on Broadway. That hasn't happened. And that's okay. Right. Part of this for me was realizing and coming to terms with the fact that the entertainment industry is like a river, and you get in your raft and you go down the river, and at some point you get to a fork, and you kind of get a choice to steer, but sometimes the rapids take you and you go down a path, and it's okay to embrace the unknown, and like, it's okay to be scared of the unknown and not know exactly what's on the other side. That is those two things and are sort of the things that I live by. And so the advice that was given to me by a great lighting programmer, Craig Hausnick, he said to me, if you don't want to be an electrician anymore and you want to be a lighting programmer, put down the wrench. You're going to eat ramen for a year, but on the other end of it, you will just, when someone calls you, they say, hey, can you come in and be an electrician? You tell them, no, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm a moving light programmer now. And he said, it'll take forever. It'll take a long time, but eventually people will latch onto that because you tell people what you want to do, and, like, eventually you will find the opportunity, right? And all those other things that my dad had told me and that I thought about the entertainment industry, the river, right, was all about, okay, I'm not going to be the electrician. I'm going to try to go down the programmer fork, and it's going to take a while. The river's got a length to it, but I'm going to get there. And if by doing what I love, eventually the money will come. And on the back of what he said, that has been basically the through line through my life has been, what you like doing is the thing that you should try to be doing, and you should tell people it's what you like to be doing. And ultimately, that's what I would tell people to do, is, like, it sounds like follow your dreams, but, like, honestly, like, it kind of is, like, right? Like, Zach and I, when we left PRG, we turned to each other and said, we're going to work on a Star Wars project. It's like, that's what we want to do with our lives. And we both said, this will probably never happen, but we're going to put it out in the ethos. And every time someone asks us, we're just going to say we want to work on Star Wars. And it was 6 months later, we were working on Star Wars, right? And it was just pure focus on like an end goal that we thought would make us happy. And that was super important for us. And it's something we still do as part of the business. Like we get together every year. At the beginning of every year, Zach and I sit for some period of time. We make a decision about what, not what is, like there's obviously there's big trajectory meetings and all that, but like really what do we, Phil and Zach, want to be doing with our lives next year, and how do we do that? And it's having those honest conversations with yourself and with others. And that's the advice I would give, is just be honest and follow what you want to be doing. And also, like, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like the number of people who reach out to me who I hope that we've given opportunities to in some way, shape, or form, or given advice to, I think is huge. And that's how I got here. Like literally, I landed in LA with I had $7,000. That was it. It's all I had. I had no friends. I had no work. I knew no one other than my roommate, and I had $7,000. And I landed here in September of 2009. And I actually emailed Patrick Boozer. Randomly found his website. I was like, hey, can I like come down? I think it was, I don't know if dancing or so you think of dance, but one of the dancing shows. And he was like, yeah, you just come down, whatever, like, and he gave me the opportunity, right? And when I got there, he said to me, yeah, you should just go to PRG, get an internship there. And like, if you're any good at what you do, like it'll suck for 5 years. And in 5 years, we'll see you out here. And it was literally 5 years, almost to the day that I was sitting next to Patrick Boozer on my first live TV show. And that's how it worked. Like it was like not being afraid to reach out and ask people, because like you never know when someone's looking for help or someone needs something from someone that they didn't know they needed. So
yep, that's some great advice. I always said follow your passions, because your passions are going to lead you to great things, right?
Exactly.
I can't tell you, I have a very similar background to you. I went to school for theater and technical design. I thought I might work on theater, and then I started, getting opportunities in different industries and different places, and I just kind of followed my way around. But I never thought, to be honest with you, in a million years, I was going to end up working in video and video technology and start working in all these different fields that are all involved and wrapped around video. I was fully convinced I was going to be a lighting director, for the better part of the rest of my life. But that's not the way life works sometimes. And it's like these different forks that just kind of guide you down those paths. You still get to choose where you're going to go, but you might not necessarily end up landing exactly where you thought you were going to land.
No, exactly. It's all about, I think, looking at the landscape and making decisions based on just like that one moment in time and going, okay, like this is what I want to be doing next, and looking out what the options are and making that choice. And I mean, like I'm the first to admit, like we're all very lucky, and like it's been an exciting adventure. But like it's a lot of hard work still, and it will always be a lot of hard work, and that hard work, and it pays out eventually.
That doesn't go away.
No, it only gets worse. If I've learned anything, it only gets worse. The larger the clients, the more difficult they are, and I've seen some insane shit. So yeah, it's an ongoing adventure for sure.
So I wanted to kind of rewind a little bit, seeing as the virtual production scene is pretty hot right now. What are your thoughts on virtual production in general? What have you guys been seeing or maybe working on that's been exciting you about the virtual environment? We just saw Katy Perry production that was just done in XR from our good friends there at Silent Partner. And, it was some pretty cool stuff. So I thought,
I think I have so many thoughts about this whole thing. I'm glad that these things are happening. And this is where I diverge on the idea of the new normal. For me, there is a new normal, right? That is going to happen. And like, it's going to be how we work safely through life. Like also, like, aren't we, like all of the things that were done on Katy Perry, and it was great. And congratulations to JT and everyone involved and the whole team. But like the reality is like those things are things that I think like we could have done 6 months ago, right? We shouldn't have waited for COVID to force us into doing these things. Like these are cool opportunities that we should embrace, right? It shouldn't be that, oh, we're only doing this because we're in quarantine or because of coronavirus. These are things that like, and I know they've been working on for months, and I'm not implying that they weren't doing it. I'm just saying like, I think there's lots of clients who are looking at this going, oh, well now I can do this. no, like you could have done this a year ago. We had this conversation. You just didn't want to put money towards it because you were afraid to go outside of your boundaries. And I think what we're seeing now is people who are, because they have no choice, being pushed into a new boundary or being pushed against their boundaries and making decisions about, okay, it's either not do the job or do the job in a way that I'm uncomfortable with. And I think that's actually good for our industry. And that's why I think the new normal is hopefully working healthy and safe, of course, but also like starting to explore those boundaries in a way that I think we could have a year ago, but we didn't because people were really, really scared about taking risks. And I know that as Lux, we're always really big on risk mitigation, but part of that risk mitigation is being upfront about the conversation about where those risks are, not saying, oh, I'm afraid of doing this, so we need a different solution. It's more, hey, I'm afraid of doing this.
Risk assessment, right?
Yeah, risk assessment. Yeah, and that's a big thing. I mean, look, I'm the first to admit, I think a lot of people talk to us because I think we're an insurance policy, right? There's a lot of that goes on, right? Is, oh, we have Lux on, it'll be fine. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on what you're trying to do. Like, I don't feel like and then for us, it's approach every job like it's a new job, use the tools and resources and workflows that we developed over the years. But every client's a new client, every job's a new job, right? And it's really just being honest with where are your boundaries, but then also how do you start to push them slowly? And I think from us, that's the biggest change we're seeing is people are starting to really, really reach out and push past the boundaries they had established for the last 20 years. So for us, it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I would say, yeah, without a doubt, things have been kind of crazy. I agree with you wholeheartedly about, a lot of these things could have been done in times before COVID. But at the same time, I look at it and go, well, back a couple of months ago, everybody's running around like friggin' chickens with their heads cut off, trying to just grasp whatever little bits of time they possibly could. And everything was like, go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden, bam, we hit this wall and everything goes into full stop. Everybody starts to panic. And then things dust starts to settle and things start to fall back into place again. And I think it's, it's also a time where people have had the time again to start diving into production. Yeah. And now I think that it's a lot more viable, to start taking on these approaches in production and live production.
I don't want to call it's like, here's this, and I know this gets into like weird politics, so I'm not going to go dive too far, but I think a lot of this gets into complacency and corporate greed, right? Like there's this concept that like we had to be doing, like, okay, we had to do the Emmys and the Oscars and the Golden Globes and Critics' Choice, less time, less gear, less money, tighter schedules, and we have to move faster, stronger. We got to get better. But like the reality is, like what we really needed was we needed to take a break. Like we really just needed to take a break and like reassess where we all were as an industry. And like in a weird way, like this has given us that break, and I think that's the most important thing is that like we've had time to rest now, and because we're resting, people are now doing what I think the entertainment industry is all about, which is testing their boundaries, testing their creativity, and testing the approaches they can take. And they're opening their eyes to a world of tools that I think, they've existed since pre-Avatar, but like, King Kong and even prior to that, we've seen, movies using things like simulcam for almost 15 years now in some cases. And, and the reality is like those things are super important, but they're also tools that like we should all be embracing because they make our lives easier. And we didn't have enough time before because we were always running, right? There's this feast or famine, this sort of mental, like, we're employed here at Lux and we all have salaries and it's great, but like there's still this mentality of we're freelancers, right? Because the entertainment industry is this like weird gig economy that's like a convoluted rule by fear, but also rule through absolute demand for meeting timelines and schedules that I think has been not broken necessarily, but at least exposed. And I think that exposure has meant that we have quite a bit more optics on who in the industry now actually gets that was not a good thing and is willing to take it a little bit slower and do one less job a year so that the job they do is huge. And I look at Laura Frank as a huge, obviously someone I look up to, in an incredible way. And I think like I imagine that having this conversation with her, she understands that, and that's why she took the time she needed, you know what I mean, or is taking time, to sort of realign. And I think it's super important. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think that focus kind of helps a lot in pushing the boundary, like pushing creativity again, because people can push the creative boundaries and they could start to explore a little bit more, conceptualize more, because you're relaxed a little bit more. You've had some time to regain your sanity and hopefully, catch up on some sleep and start to realize what normal life is again, realize that you do have a dog that's been sitting in the corner neglected for weeks on end and needs to be fed and pet.
Exactly.
And, like trying to juggle all the home life stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, just kind of going back on the technology front as well. In terms of technologies, do you find any technologies right now that might be bleeding over from different sectors into our sector?
Yeah. LiDAR, for sure. Yep. LiDAR, AI, machine learning of all kinds, volumetric data, all things that I think were for a very long time either very, very VFX or very, very science heavy are in many ways going to play a prevalent role in the future of the entertainment industry. And I don't even know if I need my crystal ball to see that. But if I was to look into my crystal ball even further, it's expansions of LiDAR, it's expansions of photogrammetry. Quite honestly, it's new display technologies. It's a lot of AI. It becomes a tremendous amount of AI. Hopefully AI used for good and not to remove people's jobs, but to expand creative tool sets and to solve.
Yeah, I think it's going to solve people's problems more than replace people in general, because these AI tools and the algorithms are being used and created to enhance or help those different workflows or enhance those visuals as opposed to do them for them.
Yeah, what I will say about AI is we currently, and this is in the sort of the macro AI, like a lot of when we talk about AI is really just if-thens. And I think the reality is, like, at some point here, human thought becomes absorbed into AI, and then AI itself actually is, like, I don't think that AI is actually capable in many cases of replacing what humans are capable of right now. They still require human guidance, right? They still require correction, inference, and like these things also require some kind of human input. And at some point when that goes away, the world has changed, right? That's the thing we're all looking for, right? And I think that, and beyond that, it's the search for the metaverse, right? It's this idea that there is something larger that we can all belong to, both virtually, physically, and ephemerally, I guess, inside this concept. That I think is just still a concept for many people. And what I'll say is that I said to someone the other day, and I never realized I never realized how big the metaverse was until I realized how small of a part Lux was going to be able to play in it. And for us, it's super cool that we're able to have conversations with companies that are working on something that is 20 years down the road, but see that one little trinket of something that we might know that's unique to what we've learned over the last decade is important for them, moving that needle just a little bit. And then you realize how many needles there are, and you realize all those needles are in a massive haystack, and there's teams of researchers all over the world trying to uncover them, and that you play such an infinitesimal role, but like it's still a super cool role. So it's an interesting thing for me to, I think, and that's what I've realized, I think, actually, honestly, just in the last 4 weeks. So it's been really interesting.
I like the metaverse. It sounds like a Rick and Morty reference, you know, like it's the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, it's where I honestly think it's where we're, like, it's definitely the long-term goal, right? It's this rate, like there's an unseen arms race heading towards AI, and the idea that we can all be virtualized in a way that lets us recreate human interaction in the most tangible ways inside a virtual space. And that goes far beyond the entertainment industry. It goes far beyond medical. It is a new form of human expression, not just an adaptation or a confirmation of what we already know about ourselves.
I would say the thing that scares me the most, but also excites me the most from a technology point of view, is actually analytics and analytics-based systems and the collection of data. It's scary as hell, but at the same time, it's super, super fascinating as to those engines and the amount of data that you can collect just by interaction with people. And I think that's also going to come heavily into play into the entertainment business, probably very shortly, more shortly than we think. And
it's all about Salesforce, man. It's all about Salesforce, right? Like people don't want to talk about it. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. But the reality is, let's be honest, they're the biggest company no one knows about. And the reality is, like, Dreamforce is a huge show, but it ain't about Dreamforce. We're able to afford to do Dreamforce every year without even blinking, because they are a data analytics company, right? It's the shadow companies that for years have been collecting information on us, and like not just us, just like how the world works, right? There's so much data available. And I think it's scary, totally, right? But it's also like super interesting. And I think it's also one of the things that is unique about our generation is that we have access right now to more data the more scientifically backed data than any other generation, and probably all generations combined prior to us. And like, if you want to figure out how to make inverse kinematics work on an elephant, you have access to like researchers who understand how that like the muscular systems of elephants work, and you can visualize that data in a way that like I can probably do at home. You can build your own TensorFlow networks, right? You can do any of this. You can do stuff that like you just would never have been able to do 5, 10, 15 years ago.
I know, it's completely insane.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, Phil, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me today for this interview. It's been absolutely amazing. I wish you all the luck in the world on your future ventures, and I know you guys are going to do some amazing things. I personally can't wait to see what you guys are going to be up to. Where would folks be able to find some more information on you guys?
Yeah, so our website, which we are in the process of redoing, it's a little old, but we're in the process of redoing our website. Yeah, www.luxmc.com. And then you can always email us. I think everyone can figure out how to send us an email. And then of course, we're kind of always here to like answer questions when we have bandwidth and help people with whatever they kind of need. And thank you so much for having me. This has been a super exciting opportunity, and I know that I was super excited when I saw this pop up months ago when you started doing it, and I was like, "Oh, it's a great idea." And then it's of course an awesome name, and just the evolution of it over the last few months has been really exciting. So congratulations as well on your of course on your new jobs. Very congratulations across the board.
Thank you. Yeah, some interesting things are going to come out of that company in the foreseeable future. So it's going to be
looking forward to it.
Really fun. Well, thanks again, dude. Thanks for joining. And everybody else who's tuned in to watch this, thank you guys so much for your continued support and for tuning in on these episodes. It's been a lot of fun. We are going to take Q&A. We're going to do a little bit differently. So if you guys don't mind posting your Q&A questions in the comments of the video while you're watching, or after you're done watching the video, of course, we'll actually collect those questions and then do a follow-up. We'll probably do it in a video fashion, maybe live, maybe pre-recorded, not too sure yet, but we'll definitely get you answers back to the questions that you guys may have. So thank you again so much for tuning in, and of course, stay ahead of the curve.